You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Magic Mind and Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinezic, and today we're buzzing into episode 137, and we have a good list of follow-up to get here, Fran, before we get into the native plant content that everyone came here for.
You look naked without your
I
laptop.
know, it's I forgot my computer at home, which is not very far. It's a 5-minute walk and a 2-minute drive, but I said, I'm going to go raw.
Old school. Going old school.
Yeah.
You look like a newscaster.
I can't remember, was it the newscaster? I can't remember his name, but he's like, F it, we'll do it live. That's what I'm doing right now. We're just going to go with it. But
awesome.
I have my notes.
Yeah. So first thing on our follow-up is we're very happy to announce that A Native Plant Every Day with Tom and Fran, Season 2 will start March 6th. So we have a production assistant helping us this year, and it's a very similar format. We're just changing it a little bit, but we do have someone putting the plant information together, which hopefully means less errors because I'm not involved.
She is much more thorough in research than you. I do think she's going to consider it a slight that you call her a production assistant. I would have called her our producer for that show.
Okay, you know what?
Seeing as she's doing all the work, and we are literally just the voices of the show.
All right. I will call her our producer for that. So she'll get a production credit.
Yeah.
She'll get a show credit. But I know she has about 3 weeks worth written already. And because she's writing it and Tom and I don't know what they are, we'll both be able to guess at the beginning of the show. And I think we're going to do a little bit of like a Wheel of Fortune where there's some givens every week. So we'll mix it up a little bit. I think we're continuing on with the lightning round.
Yeah,
so
that was a good addition.
I agree. So hopefully this is a little more streamlined this season. So
I'm looking forward to it. We're going to start recording here within the next month. So
we just got a new review saying please more episodes. So there you go.
All right. So and second piece of follow-up, which we brought up on last week's episode, is we have a couple job openings. So you can go to our Facebook page. There's a job section on there, and you can find them there. You can also find them on our website. I don't know why I didn't reference that before. But if you go to pinelandsnursery.com, not nativeplantshealthyplanet.com, but pinelandsnursery.com, there's a little menu icon in the top left corner. You click that. Scroll down a little bit. It says career opportunities. It'll have it listed there. And there's actually another one that a new position that we're coming up with that I have to add to that as well. So
you want to put it in the links in the show notes?
Yes, we will put it in the links in the show notes as well. But yeah, we're looking for a seed salesperson. The assistant propagator position is still on there, although we've narrowed that down to a really tight pool already. And then we're always looking for delivery drivers. This is a really good opportunity if you're in the area. You're near Columbus, New Jersey, and we've had a lot of luck with retired folks who are just they aren't ready to be completely done working. They like waking up early in the morning. They don't mind getting a little dirty and know how to drive a truck. That's the key criteria there. And then we're also looking for a crop production specialist as well.
Our drivers actually love doing it. They say, hey, I get to go somewhere different every day. I get to meet interesting people and see great work being done. Mm-hmm. And they all love it.
Yeah, and every once in a while you get to deliver to a celebrity's house.
We've delivered to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
I didn't hear that one. I always remember, I feel like
we sent plants there. Actually, that was...
He's not the one signing for it when you show up.
I'm trying to think where else we've gone.
I remember hearing Steven Spielberg, and I remember hearing Billy Joel. This is just I'm hearing this third or fourth hand.
Billy Joel. I know we've sent to Billy Joel. We've sent to Richard Gere, one of the Versace's. I'm trying to remember who else. And I know Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Those are the four I remember. Yeah. I don't remember Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, one of our drivers said, "Oh yeah, I was at Steven Spielberg's house." So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
And the other caveat with that is you got to be able to drive a truck in New York City. That's probably the trickiest part of it all. So.
Yeah.
Most of our vehicles are now automatic, though, so that makes it a little
We're
bit
down
easier.
to one truck that's not
One
an
truck that's not, and it's it was kind of like the bull that couldn't be rode. So we had one driver who's like, "I love this thing,"
Yeah.
but everyone else hated it.
It's
But
a 16-gear split shift.
So, but yeah, if you're interested in applying for a job here, easiest way to do it, just go to our website, www.pinelandsnursery.com. In the menu, there's a spot that says career opportunities, and all those openings are going to be listed right there.
And I'll put the link in the show notes. Actually, we've just redone our website. So instead of having to go to our website for the show notes, they're all in each episode, wherever you're listening to. So you can find the links much quicker. And the website's kind of redone and all the same great information. So it's just a little easier to get to.
The next one on my list here is actually, I almost used this as my article this week. But I was like, I shouldn't do this because I was involved with it, and it just kind of sounded a little self-promotional. But that's the New Jersey Invasive Species Bill.
Yes.
That is just it's progressing through the state Senate, and I got asked to testify for that bill for the New Jersey Nursery and Landscape Association, and as our group, like there's some obviously some nurseries and landscapers that would be upset that you're taking away products and plants that you'd like to use and no longer could. But as a group, we kind of said this is the right decision to make going forward. We should support this. We don't want to knowingly be out there planting things that are bad for the environment. But at the same time, the industry as a whole is like, well, but we want to make sure we have a voice in how this is done. We don't want things just added arbitrarily because someone thinks that it might be, or it got posted on an app saying that they saw it in a weird place. They want to have a voice and make sure things are done through a scientific process. So it was important for the New Jersey Nursery and Landscape Association to have a voice in this and say, hey, we want to be a part of this. We don't want to be harming the environment. So, but we want to be involved in the process to make sure it works for everybody. Yeah. So, I got to testify for that. And basically I said, good job, everyone. We appreciate that you sponsored this, and we want to have a voice. And that was it. But I got to follow 300 other individuals, and it was Dr. Emil DeVito, Dr. Mike Van Cleef, and I don't remember the third woman's name. She brought a bunch of props, and it was they gave really awesome testimony saying this is the process we went through. They were on the New Jersey Forest Task Force. And she brought a bunch of props. I wish I remembered the name, but she's like pulling out Oriental Bittersweet and saying, this is what the vine looks like when it's new, and here's what it looks like after 10 years.
That's awesome.
And it's like the size of your arm around and all different kinds of root systems and stuff to really just highlight this is why some of this stuff can be as bad as well. They had really powerful testimony that that kind of moved a lot of people in the room and say, oh, okay, this is why we're even talking about this. So, but yeah, progress. We had the opportunity to be one of the first states to do this. Now we're a little bit behind. And
I mean, because we were just talking,
we're getting there.
We saw Pennsylvania just add burning bush to their list along with Bradford pear. We had talked about Delaware doing it about a year ago. Was it earlier
Delaware
this year?
did it. New York did it probably a decade ago now.
Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit less than that, but it's been nearly 10 years.
It's been floating around in Jersey for at least 2 decades.
Yeah.
I'd say.
I think 2004 is when it was first put in by Governor McGreevey was the one who started it. And then Chris Christie ended up getting rid of it. Just because it was taking a long time. That was all the way in, I want to say it was like even almost 2010 by the time that they got to a point where it was starting to work through and have a list that was going to be formalized. But the good thing for New Jersey is you have Pennsylvania's done it, New York's done it, Delaware's done some stuff. So we don't have to make up our own stuff anymore. We can just kind of say, oh, it works there. Yeah. Where were the problems? Hey, New York, what were the problems you had?
We're in the middle of all of those
what worked well? And we can just kind of copy off of what they did and cut to the chase a little bit. So
that's perfect.
But so stay tuned on that. There's also a bunch of native plant legislation that's been proposed or even accepted over the last handful of years. So it's important, even if you're not in New Jersey, to stay tuned to what's going on in local and state and even federal politics in the native plant and habitat realm, because there's a lot of stuff going on and you can make your voice heard in certain ways. Completely. And I see you have one more thing. The last one I have on here, and this actually rolls into my That's Hot choice for this week. So why don't we get into That's Hot, and then I'll talk about deer food a little bit.
All right. All right, I'm going to let you go
Yeah,
first.
so my pick for a plant that's hot this week is shagbark hickory, which is Carya ovata, and you may be wondering, okay, Tom, this is another real weird choice for this time of year.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Well, why don't you think so, Fran?
I think the bark alone, it stands out more, especially at this time of the year where there's no foliage and you're walking through the forest and you really get to focus on that bark. I could see that being the reason, and the nuts, the harvest.
Yeah, I didn't even think about really either of those things.
Okay,
when
all right.
It.
Well,
It was we had a question in the Facebook group, in the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, which I'm pulling up now so I can actually see who wrote the question too. But they were basically asking, in one of our previous Buzz episodes, I was saying how deer don't prefer Japanese honeysuckle, but they'll eat it when they kind of run out of choices. And he's like, well, I see deer eating Japanese honeysuckle, and something I key in on. And it just so happened that another podcast I listened to that's kind of like native plant adjacent called Land and Legacy, I've referenced it here before. They put up an episode, and it was like, what did deer eat during the winter? So I listened to it, and it was basically talking about some of the native plants that they like to eat, and it tends to be a lot of woody browse.
okay.
So this time of year, you don't think about it. You think about this in like March when the plants are like about to leaf out. You have these big buds. Yeah. But a lot of these plants already are budding out and have like shagbark hickory one. I walked by one yesterday, and the buds were like almost the size of like like bigger than nickel. And I'm like, man, these things are huge. Well, white-tailed deer really love to eat these kind of things. And one of the issues that we find in our area is they're not down at their level. Typically, like you're starting to get these winter storms and trees are going to fall down, or if you're in a healthy ecosystem, things haven't been overbrowsed. So you have sassafras buds and shagbark hickory buds that are lower down to the ground that the deer can go and eat because they're tender and they have a lot of nutrients in them. So that's what the deer are really after. But they don't have those because they tend to be overbrowsed, and then they'll turn to other things. And probably when you get to that point where everything's overbrowsed, that's when Japanese honeysuckles is like number one.
Yes.
And that's what they said on the Land and Legacy podcast.
And that's
too.
where
They're
it's going to pop in.
If you don't have any of the other stuff, and you find Japanese honeysuckle, that's where you want to go hunt because that's where the deer are going to be. And I'm like, so yeah, I guess it is kind of, it's like not, it's something deer are definitely going to eat, but it's not like it's number one on the list. It just appears to be number one on the list because we tend to not have the other 5 things ahead of them.
And probably where things are overbrowsed, that's where you're more susceptible to get Japanese honeysuckle too. Yeah. So if it's there, that's you can probably get a glimpse of what's been happening in that area.
Yeah, sure. And that was Matthew Marvin who asked that question in our Native Plants Healthy Panic group. So that was why I picked that. It has shaggy gray bark. The bark is really pretty cool. And then the nuts, I just saw someone else was making hickory nut milk.
Really?
On Instagram the other day, and I'm like, oh, I'll have to look that up later. That doesn't sound the most appealing to me.
No, but it's interesting.
I'll take a look and
people consume almond milk. Why not hickory nut milk?
Yep. So, Fran, what did you pick this week?
So I picked Carolina Rose or Pasture Rose, which is Rosa Carolina. And the reason why I picked this one is it's still actually green in my garden. Like some of the leaves have turned yellow, but with the cold weather that we've had, and I know for this weekend for us it's high 24, and it's still green, which boggles my mind. So stems have straight needle-like thorns, frequent flowers, bloom late pink in early summer. Found in many habitats from thickets to open woods to roadsides. Gets 3 to 6 foot tall. It is an upland, which means 99% of the time it's found in dry conditions, and it attracts birds and bumblebees native from Maine to Georgia and West Oklahoma. So it could take the cold temperatures. It could take the warmer climate. Very versatile rose. I love it, and that was one of the things that my wife chose to remove her non-native roses to replace with this, and she's thrilled with it. So I thought,
no, that's a good choice because it's another one you don't think of being a hot plant right now, but a lot of people are anything that still has leaves or has is green to it is an attractive plant now.
Even my oak leaf hydrangea, which typically hold till December, or all defoliated. This is the one thing that still has leaves in my property. that's
a great choice.
Yeah, so, 2 great choices. If you don't have either of them, carry it. Make sure you have enough room.
Yeah, definitely.
That's going to be a big one, but it does produce a good mask.
Make sure you wear a hard hat around your yard if you do have them already.
Yes, very true. But try to add 1 or 2 of those to your property. You want to do some this or that?
Yeah.
All right. So I love that I don't really have to prompt in the Facebook group for people to vote because they're voting immediately now, especially now that Christiane is getting the votes up like right away too. Yeah, that's not a knock on you.
Oh, that was a knock on me.
No, it wasn't a knock on you.
I thought you were going to say you don't have to look at the score because you knew I already won. So
there is a winner, and the winner is. You did blow me out this week. It's Tom wins 11-4. I think I got a couple pity votes because you were killing me.
You may have.
Yeah.
And
just looking at who voted for me, I think some of them were out of pity.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay. I chose last week's article mainly for you because I knew you would enjoy it.
And I really enjoyed that article, and I'm trying to remember what my article was last week.
Of course,
I don't think it's right.
I didn't update it. No, I'm trying to remember what yours was.
I guess I could go look. It was a really good one. I do remember.
No,
that.
yours was more relevant. I know mine was the Maryland Denrec. Or not Denrec, American Maryland.
It was the
Department of Natural Resources doing their
cookbook.
wild foods cookbook and game cookbook where you could still submit recipes.
Oh yeah, mine was. I do remember this. This was that farmers were fighting milkweed and now they're planting milkweed and trying to help it. So,
which was a fantastic article.
Yeah,
that deserved winning.
Fran, there was another piece of follow up. I guess it really wasn't follow-up that I forgot about. Do you mind if we do this? Before? I know Alyssa Lewis is going to send us a note. You started the segment at this time, but
you know what? There were a lot of articles that we were going to choose, too, that we didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know if that...
It has nothing to do with articles.
Okay.
It's we got a piece of mail. And
really?
I've had it sitting here. It's actually addressed to you. But I saw who sent it, and I saw where it was from, and I'm like... I think we should open this up on air. So I'm going to actually hand it to you since it does. I don't want to break the law. And
All right. Let me see here. Let me see who sent this.
I'm assuming the last name is relevant here.
Oh.
And the first name is irrelevant in this case. And it feels heavy.
Yeah.
It's a big brown USPS envelope. And inside there's something that is rectangular and heavy and
I'm just curious why I'm getting this.
I guess we could have saved this for a later time. But
let me see.
Does this count as a Christmas card?
So it's a copy of Nature's Best Hope by Douglas Tallamy, and there is a letter inside addressed to me with the Homegrown National Park letterhead.
Is it a good letter or a bad letter, Fran?
No. I'm just laughing because it's addressed to me at the top, and then it says "Dear Joan," and they crossed out Joan and handwrote Fran! Exclamation point. Yeah. But this was, the reason why it's addressed to me is because the company made a donation to Homegrown National Park, but I had done it through like we split up making donations at the end of the year, and I just happened to make this one on my credit card, and that's why I'm getting it. So it's a thank you for the generous support, and as a thanks, a copy of Nature's Best Hope, saying if you already have a copy, pass it on to someone willing.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome.
So that's all.
Thank you, Homegrown National Park. That's a really nice gift.
That is a fantastic gift. So
I was wondering if we got a Dr. Tallamy had a new book coming out that he didn't tell anyone about, and he wanted us to pre-read it and give him notes. That would have been something else.
Here's a draft. Doesn't he have one coming out about oaks, or was that
the
already?
Oaks one already came out?
Yeah,
but I think there is another one in the. I would assume there's another one.
So,
but
what a wonderful gift.
Yeah, we should have saved that for Grow Read a Book since I don't have one this week. But
and it is engraved. He not engraved.
He engraved it with
It's
Chisel
signed.
engraving is hard to do on paper.
It's
a signed copy.
a personalized signed copy. That's
Awesome.
That's
Very
wonderful.
cool. Is it to Fran or is it to Joan?
It's actually to Fran. Here, but look at the. I'm not trying. Here, look at the letter. You'll see why I'm laughing. It's pretty funny. 'Cause
It really is. You're Joan. And crossed out into Fran.
but above that it says Fran Chismar, and the address and everything. But then it's I just that was a very generous gift.
Oh yeah,
Thank
but
you.
Michelle and Doug, we do really appreciate this. This is very well received.
Oh, totally. And if you haven't donated to Homegrown National Park,
or signed up and gotten yourself on the map.
did you?
I am on the map.
I am on the map also. So I think that's very important. So please make sure you support. This is a fantastic tool, and it's a very important work that's being done. So if you haven't signed up or donated, please do, because it's spreading the good gospel the way it should be about native plants. So
Yeah. So that was supposed to be for follow up, but then I forgot, and then I looked over. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't remember to do this, so we'll do it now.
I was thinking we both chose articles, but there were some great articles this week, because there was a fantastic article about Kyle Leibarger.
Yes, yeah.
I'm trying to remember what magazine that was in.
I think it was Alabama.com.
Yeah.
That did it. Then
A fantastic article, and then there's the article about I Fought the Lawn and
the lawn won, or lawn lost.
The lawn lost, that Dr. Peter Groffman mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I've had one of our customers send it to me after that without knowing that we talked about it. So, and just, I guess as follow-up, those two episodes have been some of our
fastest risers for the first week. So, yeah, that's awesome that people really are enjoying those two. And again, I'm embarrassed. We did not know who Dr. Groffman was until we saw his face on our Zoom screens.
But it's just the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Yep.
So, all right. So you won. Would you like to go first or second?
You know what? I was going to go second, but I'll go second.
Okay. All right. So my article for this week, and it's not a big one. I can read the whole thing. Actually, I didn't even put the whole thing in here, but I've been going to the LA Times a lot recently because they've been posting a lot of native plant articles. We had the one about inclusivity and the California Native Plant Society. This one is by Jeanette Marantos, and it's called Native Plants Are Bringing New Life to LA's Ravaged Areas. Here's how to help. 'Tis the season for restoration, right? Restoring ties with family and friends, restoring faith in our fellow humans, restoring hope that somehow love can prevail, and restoring habitat in the fire and human-ravaged areas of Southern California, which actually sounds a lot more doable than world peace. Here's the rub, however. Habitat work is pretty popular, too. This article was supposed to be about the volunteer opportunities at Rio de Los Angeles State Park this month, planting native plants to restore habitat in a former rail yard. But those volunteer slots offered through the state park's volunteer calendar and restoration partner Theodore Payne Foundation have already filled up for December, as have similar restoration projects in Curravunga Sacred Springs in Sawtell and Los Angeles State Historic Park in Chinatown. So if you're interested in rewilding, i.e. restoring native plants to prevent erosion, capture rainwater, and help native birds, insects, and other animals survive, there are many upcoming volunteer opportunities this month and beyond. You can help restore some ecological balance to our region while learning from people who work with native plants every day to rebuild our fire-scarred hills and contaminated urban areas. Rio de Los Angeles is a good example of how restoration works. This newish park sits in the middle of an industrial zone and residential area in Glassell Park, close to the eastern banks of the Los Angeles River. For 60-plus years, the site was known as Taylor Yard, one of the region's largest railroad switching yards. When it closed in 1985, community groups pushed to turn the land into a park instead of a more industrial space, said Luis Rincon, Community Engagement Coordinator for California State Parks. Partnerships were formed between state and city, and Rio de Los Angeles State Park opened in 2007 with city-supervised playgrounds and athletic fields and state-managed hiking trails laced with native trees and shrubs. Volunteers helped put those plants in the ground, and more than a decade later, it's hard to realize that you're in an urban industrial area. The trails are lined with large sycamore, black walnut, and cottonwood trees. There's a scent garden filled with fragrant sages created by landscape designer Margaret Oakley Otto. tall sugar bush and toyon shrubs covered with berries and dried remains of summer wildflowers. When the drought dried up irrigation water on the trails, volunteers used buckets and wheelbarrows to keep new plants alive until they were established enough to go without regular water, Rincon said. There are swales to capture rainwater whenever it comes, an increasing number of birds and other creatures who find shelter and food in natural areas, including endangered least Bell's vireo, a small river dwelling bird whose numbers have plummeted. But the restoration work is more than rebuilding the land and creating habitat, Rincon said. You're also restoring a piece of nature for people to step out of their urban environments just by crossing a street. This park is a gateway. We want them to be inspired by what they see here so they go further to see places like Sequoia or Yosemite. Bottom line, volunteers are a critical part of continuing restoration work around Southern California, largely organized by non-for-profit organizations. But these groups can only handle so many volunteers per project. So do your research now, register with the groups you like, sign up for notifications, fill out the volunteer forms and waivers so you can jump right in when there's an event. And then they go on to list a ton of volunteer opportunities. So I like that they're spreading the word that these are all the people doing great work. You can volunteer. It was nice to see that the volunteer opportunities they were going to write about were already filled up. So in the article, I think they go into the next 2 months' worth of volunteer opportunities and list so many different things. So it's nice to see that work is being done to create these places for people to go, that they're thriving well, that the people care about it. And there's so many people caring about it that these slots are filling up very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's being done in the LA Times, which is fantastic. Like, it's just, it seems like these are becoming more and more constant articles.
Yeah, we joked around about it in our last episode that it was we are being really serious. That when we started, it was kind of hard to find some of these articles. Now, some of it was we just weren't in tune with where they were being written.
Yeah,
but just over the last 2 years, it's been like,
changed a lot.
The New York Times has something in there at least monthly.
Yeah,
if not significantly more often than that. And it's just, now it's like different parts of the country. It's just a regular component of their publishing.
We've seen it New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, plus all the smaller ones throughout.
Yeah.
But it's just a little overwhelming. Early on, we'd have a couple articles to choose from, and you and I may pick the same one.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that not only are these opportunities out there, that people are taking advantage of them, and they're filling up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
I just like the message it was sending, and especially California with all the wildfires, saying this is really important, and it's just sending the right message. They're being progressive about it, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm also keeping my article Cali as well. And but before I do want to talk about my article, going back to the I Fought the Lawn and the Lawn Lost,
yes,
that ended up getting picked up by I think CNN, and it was on like mainstream news media on
and
TV.
It should be.
And the other interesting thing is if you've heard of the Facebook page, the Humane Gardener.
Yes.
And that it's actually her sister and brother-in-law who
really
were the ones who did it. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's another, and she spoke at the, I'm blanking on her name right now, but it's she spoke at the last Native Plant Society, New Jersey Native Plant Society meeting. So, but
speaking of meetings, before I forget,
yeah,
because we're coming up on the first trade show that we're going to in person in Baltimore in 3 years, which is the Mid-Atlantic Nursery Trade Show. If you're in the industry, we have our normal booth. Make sure you stop by and say hello. We'll be there in person this year. We'll be wearing our Native Plants Healthy Planet T-shirt.
Yeah. And I guess I'd even go a step further and say we talked about it. You talked about it a long time ago, how we were talking about putting together this organization for like industry native plant growers, whether it was seed or plants, someone who worked at a nursery or owned a nursery. Not necessarily you just like to garden with native plants, but hey,
you're in the industry
and doing this for a living. We want to put a group together for that. And we actually did. I was talking to someone, they said, oh, what about a Facebook group to start out? And then you'll see if there's the interest. And it was actually our NJNLA president, Frank. Why can't I think of his last name? But he's like, yeah, just make it. We had it for a different kind of thing. And he's like, we just started a Facebook group. And I was like, wow, there's actually a lot of interest in this. And then they built an organization out of it.
Yeah. I can't even, I know you said I mentioned it, but I can't even take credit. That was Jack Pizzo from Pizzo
It was Jack
Nurseries.
Pizzo and then Kyle Banis from Pizzo, and we talked about it and said, hey, it would be great to have that, because then you can kind of network outside of your immediate area. We're all facing a lot of the same issues, whether it be labor related or pesticide related or just things that we all have a similar ethic. It seems like
we should be able to communicate.
So we need to have a way to communicate and even work together on some of these things. So so we started a Facebook group. I've invited a bunch of growers to it. I think we have 7 or 8 members now, representing seed businesses and nurseries from as far away as Kentucky right now. So,
wow, nice, very nice. Let's keep it going.
But we want to get a group of like a few 100, 200 people there that, hey, we're having this, and this is one of the things happening at Mance is we're trying to get a group together. Just go hang out, have a drink or two, and maybe some snacks, and just hang out and kind of talk shop. So if you are in the industry and want to be a part of this group, the group name is just Native Plant Growers. Very original, right? Yeah. And so if you look up native plant growers on Facebook and then request to join, I am the admin. Fran is also an admin. Yes. I'm reviewing every person who applies, and I'm not afraid to turn you away if you don't list that you work for a business. And I'm going to try and verify. One of the things we do want to do with this group is just keep it really limited to people who are, like I said, in the industry, because we have different concerns and problems than native plants as a whole, very specific concerns, and we don't want to get watered down with a lot of other
questions or things like
and talk. So if you're interested in joining that, it's Native Plant Growers on Facebook.
Tom will run that with the same iron fist that I use to run the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. Yeah. And I'm going to use that as an opportunity, since we're so sidetracked today. If you're a regular member of the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group and you want to post something of an organization that you're working with that's doing good or has an event that our other listeners or followers may appreciate, we're okay if you post that. If you aren't active in the group and all you do is post links to your own business or to your own blog or to your own YouTube page or to your own organization, I'm deleting them. I'm sorry. I've had to delete. I went through where I deleted like 5 in a row because it's people that you never hear from, and it's like they're posting about this business and it's their business. Or
it's not meant to be a promotional space. Yeah, it's meant to be just a place to communicate information, and you might have something someone's really interested in, and that's a great place to share, or even just share your thoughts. It kind of started as an idea to say, hey, this is some of the stuff we talked about on the podcast, and maybe people. We're obviously just the two of us talking right now, or maybe we have a guest and we're talking with them. But there's people who want to chime in their own thoughts. And like the question we referenced earlier about deer food, that's something I said. They were able to respond to me, and we were able to have a little bit of communication outside of the show.
Which is perfect.
Show there. So that was kind of the idea behind it. It's not necessarily a promotional space. It's a way to advance the message of native plants and collaborate and even argue about some stuff a little bit in a friendly way.
Yes. So. Yeah. It's meant to be a community. So, and I'm sure that the people that I'm talking about whose posts I erase don't even listen to the podcast, so they're not going to hear this. And that would make sense. But it's just a friendly reminder. I've had to really clean out some posts like over the last month. Yeah. As the community grows, it gets attention.
So now we're going to get to my article, and we're going back to Cali.
All right.
It was in a website called The Conversation, which I have not vetted to see if it's actually legit or not. But it was posted originally on Instagram by an account I like to follow called Sustainable Dish, where it kind of talks about. She's a nutritionist, and she talks about how some things have been demonized in nutrition, that it's more of a media thing, and a lot of our nutritional basis today has been picked up by, here's a flashpoint that we can get people riled up, so let's run with it and say, oh, like the Atkins diet and all carbs are the devil. She's like, it's a lot more nuanced than that, and there's some things that have been just mischaracterized, and she's trying to correct some of that. So she posted this article, and then I read it, and I'm like, oh, this kind of makes some sense, and it was written by someone from NASA, so I guess that
I'm sure they're pretty smart.
Yeah, and I do want to credit the authors here before I forget. It's Shane Caulfield from NASA, and then James Randerson from University of California, Irvine.
Okay.
And the title of the article was Satellites Detect No Real Climate Benefit from 10 Years of Forest Carbon Offsets in California. And I'll read some of the article and then give some of my thoughts.
All right.
So, many of the companies promising net zero emissions to protect the climate are relying on vast swaths of forests and what are known as carbon offsets to meet that goal. On paper, carbon offsets appear to balance out a company's carbon emissions. The company pays to protect trees, which all absorb carbon dioxide from the air. The company can then claim the absorbed carbon dioxide as an offset that reduces the net impact on the climate. However, our new satellite analysis reveals that researchers have suspected for years forest offsets might not actually be doing much for the climate. The findings send a pretty grim message about efforts to control climate change, and they add to a growing list of concerns about forest offsets. Studies have already shown that projects are often overcredited at the beginning and may not last as long as expected. In this case, we're finding a bigger issue, a lack of real climate benefit over the 10 years of the program so far. Forest carbon offsets work like this. Trees capture carbon dioxide from the air and use it to build mass, effectively locking away carbon away in the wood for the lifetime of the tree. In California, landowners can receive carbon credits for keeping carbon stocks above a minimum required baseline level. Forest owners can then sell the carbon credits to private companies with the idea that they have protected trees that would otherwise been cut down. Up until this point, and even after this point, these measurements for that baseline have been manual. They're basically sending someone out to actually physically measure the trees and estimate how much carbon it would be uptaking. This article is kind of saying, well, we can actually study a lot of this by satellite, and see,
which makes sense,
actual data versus approximated data. So satellites offer a more complete record than on-ground reports collected at the offset projects that allow us to assess all of California since 1986. From this broad view, we identified 3 problems indicating a lack of climate benefit. Carbon isn't being added to these projects faster than before the projects began, or faster than non-offset areas. 2, many of the projects are owned and operated by large timber companies which manage to meet requirements for offset credits by keeping carbon above the minimum baseline level. However, these lands have been heavily harvested and continue to be harvested. And then 3, in some regions, projects are being put on lands with lower value tree species that aren't at risk from logging. For example, one large timber company in the redwood forest of northwestern California, the offset project is only 4% redwood compared to the 25% redwood on the rest of the company's property. Instead, the offset project's area is overgrown with tan oak, which is a tree I'm not familiar with, which is not marketable timber and doesn't need to be protected from logging. So one recommendation from this survey or study is to begin using satellite data to monitor forests and confirm that they are indeed being managed to protect or store more carbon. For example, it could help foresters create more realistic baselines to compare and get offsets against. Publicly available satellite data is improving and can help make carbon offsetting more transparent and reliable. California can also avoid putting offset projects on lands that are already being conserved. We found several projects owned by conservation groups on the land that already had low harvest rates. Without improvements to the current system, we may be underestimating our net emissions, contributing to the profits of large emitters and landowners, and distracting from the real solutions transitioning to clean energy economy. Wow. So I didn't really know this was going on, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And that's how we've even talked about it with these. It's shopping season here for all the holidays, and it seems like almost half the things you buy, they're saying, "Oh, we'll plant a tree if you buy these shoes, and we'll plant a tree." I bought something the other day, and it was like, "We'll plant a tree," and we've tried to clear up already that those aren't the people. It's not like you buy a pair of shoes, and then the CEO of the shoe company is going out there and planting a tree. No, they're paying another company to do it. That company is speculatively planting trees. Typically,
yes.
And this isn't a blanket statement, but typically this is how it works. Some company is planting trees. Sometimes it's little tiny seedlings, and who knows how many actually live. It seems that that's even improved over time. That more companies are that are doing the actual planting are taking a little bit more accountability and trying to do it the right way, because I see so many other companies doing it the wrong way. And that's kind of what is happening here, I guess, is that you have I'm sure there's some speculative outlets that are like, hey, we have all this property and we can make money by selling the credits. They even talked about how there's some landowners who are signing up for this program, and then eventually will harvest the timber off the land, pay the penalty, but because of inflation, they've actually made more money.
Wow.
Even though they were paying a penalty because they took it out of the program too early, they've made more money by doing both than by selling the timber after getting paid to protect it and then paying the penalty than if they just had harvested it. So it's
I'm not surprised there's a loophole. You know what I mean? Like I'm really not shocked. If there was someone would, like with any program, there's always people that try to find a way to exploit it.
Now the first thing I do, well, now I've said like 5 other things. One of the things that it is important to point out here is it's only 10 years worth of data. Yeah. So you're talking about forests. Obviously, things happen in forests way, way slower than 10 years.
Yeah.
It's but it can kind of give you a trend that you're going to either see continue to follow or it's going to drastically change. But typically those trends will continue the way they are.
Yeah.
It's, but yeah, it's an interesting idea. Hey, let's use technology. You don't have to have boots on the ground. Now you start seeing some disparities. Now you can target. I'm going to put boots on the ground here and here and here. The rest of it you can kind of see from overhead. Another thing that was interesting is how much of these are overvalued to start out. Because I think Fran and I can see your face. We agree on that a lot. A lot of times we look at stuff and it's like, oh yeah, this is going to do X, Y, and Z, and it ends up being like 10 times what it ended up actually being is the boardroom promises that are made.
Yes.
So it's there's just a lot going on in this that I did not understand or knew was going on before.
I appreciate the use of technology to better measure this, and it's only 10 years worth of data, but I'm glad now that they're doing it and it can be redefined. You know, that gives you a way to at least say these are the problems with the current system. Let's fix it and move forward and do some better good rather than just letting it go the way it was or getting rid of it. So it's good intentions that I think were somewhat exploited that hopefully can be reeled back in.
Another conundrum that they touched on, I only included a few paragraphs of the article, but we're talking about California.
Yeah.
And they've been having a lot of wildfires. And so you have a program, money has been paid out to a landowner for this program, then you have a wildfire sweep through. It's going to take a long time to rebuild that carbon. Well, you've released a whole bunch of carbon through that fire that was previously conserved. And then now it's going to take a long time to rebuild it. What happens to the payments when that happens? And there's a lot of moving parts here. And I think it's probably a good program at the heart of it.
It's a progressive program.
Making sure to close up some loopholes and another thing that we talk about a lot too, and this is the whole purpose of Southeastern Grassland Initiative, is we really focus on forest being the number one thing for capturing carbon and kind of ignore salt marshes and grasslands and the ocean and all these other things. And so, hey, plant trees, and maybe that's not always what's supposed to be there or the best place for our time and money to go into.
You know, I'm not going to say who or what, but I was dealing with a customer that has their customer destroyed basically marsh for their property for the view, and they have to redo it, and their customer is pushing for plant material that they know won't survive so that they can get the view back.
Yeah.
But they're missing the point of what that protection does and what it's going to end up doing to their property if they don't do it. But the reason why I was smiling when you were talking was I was picturing like a tree mafia, a forest mafia out in California, like gonna make you an offer. You know, I'm just like anything else that gets exploited. Like I'm like, I wonder what that forest mafia contingency is out in California.
Because it probably does exist.
I'm sure it probably does.
I guess a lot of it is like a lot of these. What is exposed? What this article started to expose a little bit for me, which I guess I already knew deep down, is a lot of these climate pledges that companies make. They're not undertaking themselves.
Yeah,
and it's someone else is doing it, but it happens in our business all the time.
It does.
A lot of the people who are not so much anymore, but it used to be a lot of the people who are doing these marsh restorations or wetland restorations were speculating and saying, well, I hear that they're going to build a new road from here to here, and they're going to need to buy these carbon credits or these credits for or wetland mitigation credits.
And this is a topic
and they'd sell them
for a whole nother thing. But is it really any different than mitigation banking? Where you're buying the land. Yeah, you're buying land, you're restoring it, you're selling the credits. For industries or things that are destroying wetlands or destroying marshes for the sake of progress. That's why mitigation banking exists. So it's just another form of that, basically.
Which I think is an important industry.
I'm not speaking ill of it. I'm just saying it.
Yeah, it's just you got to be conscious that it does exist, and it's but it's important that it does exist, because if it didn't, it probably wouldn't happen.
No, and we've seen a lot of
nearly as well.
We've seen a lot of incredible projects occur because of mitigation banking.
Yeah,
and
you have a specialist who really knows what they're doing instead of
and they're invested.
XYZ Corp saying, "Oh, well, we got to restore these wetlands, so let's reinvent the wheel here." No, you have someone who knows what they're doing and is going to do it the right way, and then they're able to help out.
And that's the kind of stuff I love to see. I'm not speaking ill of mitigation banking. I'm just saying there's a right way that these things can be done, and we see it done every day in mitigation. But we've seen some incredible restoration work done, and some great land that is now fully functionable. Because of that. So I would like to see more of that instead of these programs that are going overseas or other things like that. I would love to see. We've seen a lot of marsh mitigation banking done in marshes. I would love to see that used for some of these corporations.
Now, the one thing I don't know that's included in this these carbon offsets in California that is included in the mitigation banking or in the wetland restoration type stuff is they mentioned, hey, we're preserving this forest, but it's nowhere near as valuable as this redwood forest. These trees aren't going to get cut down anyway because they're not a desirable logging species. But in the wetland things is they tend to scale. You'll have a project where you're destroying 1 acre of wetlands. Well, you're going to have to recreate 3.
Yeah,
because that's what's going to offset. What you destroyed. It sounds like something like that. Yeah, and maybe it's already included in this carbon offset program in California. But it seems like something like that would kind of curb the hey, we're preserving this forest and not. Well, you have some species that would be cut down if there were enough of them. So maybe it's 5-1, maybe it's 10-1 that you need to preserve. It's interesting. I wouldn't say I'm more for it than against it for sure. It's interesting exposing some of the stuff behind it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that happens across the board. I'm just saying that typically it just seems like that program in particular left a lot of areas where someone could exploit it.
Yeah. Well, as far as is explained by theconversation.com, it sounds that way. But you can find both of these articles on our Facebook group, Native Plants, Healthy Planet. So you can go there. You can read them. They'll also be in our show notes if you want to read them there. And then when you say, hey, whose article did I enjoy more, or the presentation of the article I enjoy more, you can go and vote for that as well. And Fran and I will then argue about it. So,
I'm trying to think. This one's going to air right before Christmas, so I don't.
23rd.
The 23rd. So, we should have the notes up. There might be some lag in some of the social media posts, but Friday it should be there. So make sure you go to the Facebook group and vote because. And of course, the choice is yours. Before we do listener shout-outs, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
I'm not a big resolution guy, but I have a feeling you are a resolution guy.
Typically not. I'm a little more cynical. I try to do the best Fran that I can, which isn't really good. I don't have high aspirations, but I think this year I'm going to try to eat a little bit healthier. And I know Agatha just over the last couple months has switched to vegetarian/vegan. And a lot of the research she's doing and looking into, she's been using ground mushrooms in her coffee.
Yeah.
And I was like, these are all the things that Magic Mind is doing. The things that she's doing, they're already incorporating. And I had her try it. She's absolutely in love with it. And it's all the things that I just feel so much more even keeled throughout the day. Like I feel like I've cut back coffee. I'm adding better ingredients into my everyday routine. What else can I do? Like let's make a whole new better Fran.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And whenever I would drink some, it was just like a nice little pick me up. I just felt energized and productive. It was really nice.
Yeah, I don't feel tired at the end of the day. Like I feel refreshed. I just feel that I'm doing right by myself. I'm gonna try to continue to do that. I'd really recommend any of our listeners to try it. And actually, if you go to www.magicmind.co/native plants, over the holidays, you can get up to 56% off your subscription if you use this code within the next 10 days. And our code is Native Plants, which is a very fitting code. So,
seeing as our podcast is about native plants, even if we don't talk about plants enough, but it's still about native plants.
No, but I really think you'll love it. I know I love it. Tom does. Agatha loves it. Let's see who else we can get treating themselves better.
All right. Well, let's get back to the show.
Listener, shout out.
I'll let you go first.
Yeah, because I have a list here.
You do. I just have one.
The first one was actually kind of going off yours, friend, and that was Butch, who is on Instagram, is Das Gardner, and they also had us in their Spotify.
Oh, really?
Rap number one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I forget how many minutes they listened to, but it was a lot. It was a lot of minutes. It was like as many minutes I listened to on Spotify. They had listened to our show.
Really?
And yeah. But,
wow.
And then
that's impressive.
I also had.
We were, on my personal Facebook page, someone was commenting. Someone I had went to high school with was commenting about report cards. Like, how many report cards did you get? The comment talks too much, and I'm like, everyone from kindergarten to high school, and I'm like, I'm sure at this point someone would be willing to pay me to shut up. So, and there you go. Someone's actually listening to that much of us
by choice. That's what's crazy.
That's impressive.
I've pulled up here. They listened to 10,079 minutes of Native Plants Healthy Planet.
So they must have binged the whole thing.
That's my guess.
In a year,
because each episode is probably 60 to 90 minutes.
60 to 90 minutes, and then there's 136 episodes.
Yeah. So what's that? 136 times. We'll say 75.
Yeah.
Oh, not 7. That would be 10,200 minutes.
All right. So
maybe they listen to episodes multiple times, too. That's always possible.
Yeah.
They could have. Here's what happened, friend. They fell asleep. and then realized, hey, you know what? I missed the last episode, like that episode, so I got to go back to minute 15 and listen again.
That sounds more like it.
But you need to write to me and tell me how you actually listen to that much of us.
Just because it's relevant. My listener shout out was on Twitter, who was Brad the Dad, who tweeted that we were his number one listened to podcast on his Spotify Wrapped, and he listened to us for 1,767.
Brad, you got to pick it up, man.
10,000. Wow.
But didn't Brad the Dad also say keep the dad jokes coming?
Yeah, and I responded with a dad joke.
Yeah,
so
I had a good one, friend. I was like, I told it to my wife last night, and I'm like, I gotta remember this one for tomorrow.
I said that you and I were going to start a third podcast, all about where we discuss all about cheese, and it's going to be called K. So
that's a good one too.
I made me think of. I would wait and save it for the secret at the end, but I see that you have one.
I have, I have multiple secrets.
But my parents were okay with me getting the comment on the report card that talks too much. My oldest sister, who's 12 years older than me, on her kindergarten report card, the teacher comment was, "She kicks, screams, and plans revenge." That was in kindergarten. So, all right, he just talks too much. That's okay.
Yeah, that's
we can
not
deal
too
with
bad.
that. So, all right.
I had a note written home to my parents because I don't remember what it was in art class. I don't remember what our thing was, but it had involved food dye, and I actually drank. So like I drank some of the dye, and I went to the doctor, and they said I would be fine, but a part of me died that day.
You got me. I realized as you were getting to it, I was like, "Here it comes."
That was for Brad.
All right, you have more listener shout outs.
So we did have a review as well, 5-star review from MZ Mayfield 1, and they said we were informative and entertaining. Hopefully, this was entertaining.
Both.
Then the other two were actually at that state senate hearing.
Oh, okay.
I went to, and it was Laura Bush from the Native Plant Society, and did I give her a shout out last week?
You did.
Okay, well I'm giving you one again.
Wow,
she
two in a row.
testified as well, and then there's another woman, Tara, and I don't remember her last name, even though I asked specifically for this, but she was there as well, and
awesome.
Said she was a listener, so that's awesome.
Doing great work. Thank you. That's a lot of great listener shout-outs. And remember, if you give a 5-star review on Apple and you leave a comment, Tom will give you a personal shout-out. So just like Ms. Mayfield 1. All right, we have no questions this episode. I'm just looking at the time. I'm like, we haven't even got to the topic yet. We've gone for almost an hour. We have no questions, and you don't have a Grow Read a Book, but we do have a topic, and we wanted to go over our top 10 episodes of all time, not just for the year. But what we find is pretty much this is the first time, now that we're getting close to 3 years, like every year the top 10 episodes of all time come from that same year. This year, one managed to hang on from last year. There's one that's the very end of the year, but it kind of crossed over. So we almost had 100% turnover, 90% turnover again. So you want to start at number 10 and work our way down?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So number 10... let's see, episode.
This is the most recent episode on the list.
Yeah, so it was, and it's gaining ground. So it's episode 112, which aired on July 1st of 2022. It is a Rooted Discussions, and it was Why Our Listeners Love Native Plants, which was a part 2 of Meet Our Listeners. And it contained Alyssa Lewis, Deborah Rosenthal, and Skip Burns, who it was his second appearance on the podcast. So it was nice to talk to some old listeners, some new listeners, doing a multitude of different things in the native plant realm, and why they love native plants, and to see the work that they're doing on their own properties or the volunteer work that they're doing, and just spreading the good word. So these are all people that are very active in the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, and we talk to quite often. So outside of native plants. So it was nice to get to spend time with these people and have their stories told to a much larger audience. Yeah,
and then number 9 was a Buzz episode that was rediscovering our connections with nature, and that was episode 107 that aired on May 27th of this year. Fran, do you remember what we talked about?
I don't. I do you at all?
I honestly don't too, and I didn't look it up, and I look up the show notes, but the show notes aren't really going to tell me much.
No, I'm going to look up the show notes real fast just to see if it says anything.
I will say that coming up with the titles for our Buzz episodes can be really difficult sometimes, unless there's one thing that really stands out.
You've been on a roll. Like, I think I did a lot of the early ones, and you've been, like, I had to have a placeholder in there, and you've been on a roll the last couple months.
And usually there's something, we try and make it something that we talk about, but a lot of times we finish and we're like, what did we just talk about for the last 90 minutes? And
all right, so let's see. That's hot, this or that. We follow up on a few topics before listener shout-outs, take it or leave it. This episode's questions leave us wondering about just how much Tom and Fran know. Fran and Tom discuss ways to get your children involved with nature.
Okay.
And we kind of posed that question to our listeners, and there was a lot of feedback on that one. Yeah. Actually, that was a huge conversation on the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group.
Yeah,
so it
that
makes
really
sense
was.
That
I
one.
get it. Yeah, I do remember that now because that was right after the Children in Nature Network.
Yes.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And I remember that. And I think my Grow Read a Book was probably raising outdoor kids in an inside world.
Because we had another one around, another buzz saying getting your children outside. Yep. So we did 2. It was such a hot topic at that point that
getting your children outside was kind of the feedback we got on. I remember all this now.
Yeah.
So cool.
Number 8 was Meet the Insect Crisis with Oliver Millman, and we were very excited when we were approached about getting to have Oliver on the podcast, and we were really limited on time. He had to cancel once. His schedule was so jam-packed, being a writer for The Guardian as well. But we got maybe just barely an hour with him, and the feedback was so it's amazing how many of our listeners bought that book and talk about that book. But it was episode 104, and it first aired on May 6th of 2022.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorites that we had.
I love that book.
It was just, the book was really good, and talking to him was really good as not a plant person, not an insect person even, just someone who's exposed through their job and wanted to write a book and said, well, I wanted to write about this, but this is really what I need to write about. So next on the list was our 100th episode. You guys probably all remember it. That was back in April, early April of this year, and that was meeting the Alva Leopold Foundation with Dr. Stan Temple.
I talk about that episode more than probably any other episode because he told so many wonderful stories. We've incorporated those stories into our public speaking, and it was very impactful to both Tom and myself, and it was nice to see that it was the same way to many of our listeners.
Definitely.
I know Rick McCoy loved that episode, and it was just – it put a lot of things into perspective, and I think about that episode a lot, actually.
I do. There's so many times I reference something he told us in that episode at a talk or just in regular conversation. So that was a really nice one.
Yeah. The number 6 on the list, which was episode 92 that aired in February 11th, 2022, was Meet Bees and Trees with Cass Urban Mead. Cass is our contact for the Xerces Society, and she had just started and was introduced to us literally probably a week before then, and we had someone cancel. And we knew about her graduate studies, and she agreed last minute to come on, and it was our first time really talking with Cass. And what a informative episode. It really made us think in a way we typically don't think. And she was a fantastic guest, and we're just thrilled that we get to deal with Cass on a weekly basis, basically.
Yeah, no, she's just fun to talk to. It was eye-opening on that episode and how much fun she was to talk to, and then we get to do it all the time, so that's great.
Which is awesome.
Number 5 was another Buzz episode. Fran, you gonna look up the show notes for me?
I am.
and that was How Does Your Garden Grow, which was episode 105, and that was also in on May 13th of 2022.
Let's see. You shared a classic book and Grow Read a Book, and we shared what was happening in our home gardens, and we gave away a Yeti.
Yep.
On that one.
Yeah, that's right. I remember talking about, because it was just as spring is starting to open up, and it's like what we had planned and what we had growing, and seeing the penstemon start to bloom and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So it was kind of nice to talk about what we had going on and just make it relatable. We're going through this process just like everyone else. We're experiencing it on our own properties, and it's nice just to talk about it and let everyone know you don't have to be perfect and you don't have to be an expert to do this.
Yeah.
Because we're having the same struggles and same successes that all of our listeners are having. Number 4, which was a return guest, episode 102, which aired on April 22nd of 2022, Kyle Liebarger with Meet the Native Habitat podcast. Kyle launched his own podcast, and this was our way of getting our listeners familiar with it. So I think he was only a few episodes in at this point.
They might not even launched it yet. Yeah, it was right in the beginning. I heard that they were doing it and said, "Hey, why don't you come on here?" And
it was another last minute episode, and Kyle is always a very popular guest. So and it's always great to hear the work he's doing and get to talk to him.
Yeah, then we had another one of our real favorite episodes too, and it's amazing how many of these episodes that we consider our favorites were within the last year.
Yeah.
And this was Meet Lawns into Meadows, the book Lawns into Meadows by Owen Wormser. That was episode 86, and that was just before the new year. It was literally 51 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was 12/30 of 2021.
Now, I will say this episode is only a couple listens away from being number 2. It's going to overtake number 2 very shortly, but very popular episode.
Yeah, which number 2 was also has been up there for a long time. This is the oldest episode on the list.
Yeah, but before I forget, Owen Wormser, like that one. I think what I liked about that episode was learning about Owen's childhood and growing up off the grid and how he took those lessons with him and shared them in the book. And a lot of people wanted to know more about how to convert your lawn into meadows or why, and it wasn't a very preachy book at all. It was a very factual step by step.
One of the things for me that stuck out about that episode too is we're we're in central New Jersey, and most of the contacts we have, they're in this business that do this kind of work are in central New Jersey. So even though he's only in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
It's just nice to find out about people who are doing very similar things or have very similar ideas for what they want landscapes to look like in other parts of the country, even though it's still the Northeast. Yeah. It's just outside of our normal radius.
And the research he put into, a lot of the stats we give about oil spillage or gas spillage from home lawn maintenance, what a lot was from his book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So and then number 2 was our rooted discussion. This was number 1 for the longest time, and it got really knocked down a peg.
This was our number 1 last year, and like I said, Meat Lawns into Meadows is just about to overtake that. It's about to get knocked down to number 3.
So that episode was titled "Gardening with Native Plants." It was with Rick McCoy, John McGee from the Native Plant Podcast, and then Becky LeBoy. And that was episode 46. So this is going back a long time, Fran.
Yeah.
Almost 100 episodes. And that was from May 26th of 2021. And that was it was a really good episode. We talk about soil way more than I was expecting to when we're talking about gardening. We're talking about the soil and how important soil is.
It was very relatable. There were a lot of good stories that were shared in that one. And it's not that it was so far ahead that other ones are catching up. It's still getting listens every day. I'm like, wow, it's amazing how often this episode gets listened to. Fantastic guests, great conversations, a lot of good information passed along. So the number 1 episode, I guess, should we do a drum roll?
Do you have a drum roll on there, Fran? You can hit it. Otherwise,
you can say, go ahead.
No, you got it. I did the last 2.
All right. The last one is Meet Native Plants in Small Spaces by Joan Brandwine. It was episode number 98, and it aired on March 25th, 2022. And again, this was a listener of ours that reached out to us to tell us about the work they were doing. And we literally had her on the podcast the very next day, and it aired the day after that. She was doing something that answered the questions of so many of our listeners is, I have this kind of yard. I don't know where to start. What can I do to make a difference? And she addressed all of that very quickly. And this skyrocketed to the top. It's so far in the lead, like no one's close to catching this one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd be very surprised if it's not in the number 1 spot next year.
Yeah, that was just an enlightening episode. And one of my takeaways from this whole list, Fran, is we were really on a roll from like end of March to end of May.
Yes.
That was like that. If you want to hear us at our best, that's what you need to go back to episode 98 through probably like 100 and well, that'd be 110.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing, though, how many? Now, I will say this, because they're a little bit older. There are episodes that are, like number 11 to 16, 17 are more recent episodes that just haven't had the time to get the listens, and I'm sure they'll be on the list next year. But it's interesting to look back at this, how every year those most popular episodes come from that year. And it's which every time a listener says, "Oh, I discovered you guys and I'm going back to the beginning," I cringe a little bit. And I'm like, "Oh, thank you for at least listening now to see what it's become before you go back to the beginning and go through that whole evolution."
Yeah.
So, because that was quite a process.
We've definitely become more knowledgeable. Not to say we know a lot, but we've definitely become more knowledgeable. I think we were starting with a very blank slate.
Yes.
And then I'm joking a little bit because it is.
No, I feel that way, though.
One of the things that's kind of interesting is for how much more we know now than we did then. We were still fairly educated in this field up to that point. If we were in a room of 100 people, and you asked a question about native plants, we were probably in definitely the top 10, if not the top 5, or even just the only people in that room that would be able to have a background in that.
Yes.
It's once you get outside of our bubble, it's amazing how many. I was at a Christmas party the other day. I'm like, these people don't know anything about native plants here, and I'm not going to try and dominate the conversation and talk about all that.
No, but then you go to a conference in the industry, and
like,
I feel like
God,
I'm like, oh my God, I'm not on the level of any of these people here. I'm just thankful to be in the same room.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like imposter syndrome. Like, I don't really belong here with these people. They really know what they're talking about.
But yeah, it's just, I think we've invested in better equipment, which helps us. But our format's really gotten dialed in a little bit more. We still want it to be not amateur, but we want it to be fun, and we want to embrace our mistakes. And I
think that's part of the charm.
We really want to keep it real. We really don't edit much.
We don't really edit at all.
Yeah. It's there was one time I said something really dumb, and I was like, Fran, I wasn't even that it was that dumb. It was just completely wrong. And at the time I thought it was right. I'm like, I'm going to look this up just to double check. I'm like, oh no, that was really wrong. And I said, hey Fran, can you take that out? And you begrudgingly did. But that was 2 years ago too.
I think other than guest requests.
Yeah. And even then, it's only been once or twice. I think you asked to have that taken out. I made a joke that I decided I should really take out. And then we had a listener mention something about something that I had said. Yeah.
And even though I didn't want anyone to get the wrong idea, and I edited it out. So only maybe like 100 people heard the unedited version, and then no one else commented, but I still took it out just to be safe.
Yep.
I never want anyone to walk away questioning anything. So.
But I think it's definitely while I don't do resolutions, I do end of year reflections. So this is kind of reflecting back, and it's like I was asked to moderate. You were asked to moderate something too, but I was asked to moderate a session at a conference, and I was like, oh yeah, this will be cool. But I felt way more prepared on how to do that. And when you'd ask a question and you didn't quite get the answer that you wanted, like how to massage it and make it fun and entertaining, and then get more, kind of fill in those voids a little bit. I've gotten a lot better at that because of this, and I otherwise wouldn't have had we not been doing this podcast.
I agree. I definitely used to, during public speaking engagements, get a lot more nervous and feel unsure. I don't really get that. Actually, the moderation that I did was the first session of the conference, the 2-day conference. And when I sat down, the person who I was sitting next to when I was done, who we just met before the talk, they didn't know me. They're like, oh, you should just host this whole event.
Yeah.
Like, that was really good. Like, I don't know that. Yeah. And I was like, I'm just comfortable with it at this point.
Yeah, it's just, I think for both of us, it just made it a lot more comfortable at doing public speaking, and admitting that when we don't know things is a big thing. And I think I've gotten a lot better at that too. It's like when you're working at an industry, you're expected to know so much more than you actually do. And it's like, it's so easy to just kind of like BS your way through it when someone asks you a question and hope people know that they don't know.
They sense that they appreciate the honesty. I think we're both very good at being honest about what we don't know.
Yeah. So
that makes it easy. So I think it was a fantastic year. It's nice going by our top 10. I enjoy this every year when we do it. This has been a tradition. So if you haven't listened to all of these episodes or some of these episodes, go back and listen to them. You'll understand why they're some of our more popular ones. They continue to get listens every
One
day.
of the things that we did last year, Fran, I think we actually did in the next episode, a year ago, we did in the following buzz, where we actually listed some of our favorites. And if we were to recommend people to go back.
You want to do that in the next buzz?
I think so, because I'm looking at it, and even though I loved a lot of these episodes, I wouldn't put them as my favorites that we've done.
All right.
I like, they're obviously very close. I like a lot of our episodes.
You know what?
There's some that I'm like, I guess I would consider them underrated. I'm like, this is one I really liked, and I'm surprised it's not in our top 10.
Yeah, I know the Aldo Leopold one.
And then kind of just what we would recommend people listen to if this is the first episode they're listening to. Or I guess
I'll be honest,
next buzz is the first one. This is what we think you should listen to for the best of us.
I don't want to give a spoiler. I was going to say what one of my favorites is, but we're going to wait till the next buzz.
No free content.
All right, no free content. You got to wait for the next one. All right.
So, you have a really fun take it or leave it, and it's very timely.
And you actually mentioned it on the last buzz, and I remember.
Why I think it's so good.
Yeah, no, this was yours, and I said, you know what? Let's save it for. I don't know if you said it on air, but we said, hey, let's save it for the next buzz. So we were Christmas trees. We're right before Christmas. Mm-hmm. Real Christmas tree, fake Christmas tree, and one step further, should it be a native Christmas tree to your area?
Yeah. So this is where it's I'm keeping it real here.
Yeah.
I have always been a real Christmas tree person. That being said, the last 2 years, 3 years, we've had a fake Christmas tree.
Really?
And it's all. And my wife is also a real Christmas tree person. She's just also allergic to the mold that comes with Christmas trees. Very allergic.
I want to say this. Tom owns a Christmas tree farm.
That's not true.
There's a farm that sells.
There's a Christmas tree farm on
a property you own.
That I own.
All right, that's fair.
I did spend a couple years selling Christmas trees, and it's a lot of fun because you have
it's something that brings joy to people.
Yeah, everyone is in such a good mood except for the dads, and that is a very vulnerable position for them to be in. Because they will literally pay anything so they can go home and watch some football. There is no way they're leaving there without a tree. Yeah. It's kind of funny.
I enjoy Christmas tree shopping. Just for background, growing up as a kid, we had a fake tree for as long as I lived at home. And the moment I moved out, I have had a real Christmas tree every year since then. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's something my wife and I have talked about it. As our son gets older, I think it's important part of the Christmas tree or Christmas tradition. But in the meantime, since the last couple of years, before he was born, and then I'm not going to make my wife when she's pregnant go through and then also have terrible allergies while she's also having morning sickness. Not going to happen.
No, that's tough.
Then while he's at an age where he's not going to appreciate it as much, it's like, well, why also put her through that? Yeah. What's the word I'm looking for? She does not feel well for a couple days right after we get it, just because it's it really drives her nuts. Yeah. And it's important to note it's the mold that's on the Christmas trees. This is when people are allergic to stuff. There's very few people who are actually allergic to Christmas trees. They're really allergic to the mold that's on the Christmas tree. Yeah. It's something I think we're going to do at some point.
How sustainable are real Christmas trees? Which is doing more damage to the environment? Growing real trees and cutting them, or producing fake Christmas trees? But you're purchasing and keeping for multiple years.
Yeah, and that's where it's an interesting dilemma, because you have a lot of fossil fuels that go into actual production and then initial transport,
packaging,
of the fake Christmas trees. You also have some that goes into the real Christmas trees, but it's not made out of plastic, so you don't have a oil byproduct going into it. But you're shipping more with the real ones. Everyone's driving to the Christmas tree farm and everyone's driving home every single year.
Have you ever purchased a Baldwin burlap Christmas tree?
No, my dad said he had one when they were a kid, and then they'd plant them. We sold a couple Christmas trees that way.
That's great if you have a place to plant it.
Yeah, and then I saw in the UK they do potted ones. And then you're actually renting them, which I would not want to be in that business, because I know people don't water the Christmas trees. Yes. So you're getting back something that's not
taken care of.
Be taken care of.
Now, my favorite Christmas tree is a Fraser fir, which is not native to this area at all. So I'm taking a tree that's not native to here, having it grown just to be cut for my enjoyment for 30 days. I don't know how that is.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. And I used to be in the Christmas Tree Growers Association. I used to be a member of that too. And it's, I guess one of the things, this is probably the deciding factor for me, is you're supporting an agricultural venture. Typically it's going to be a small business, family owned, like I know when we ran it, you're part of everyone's Christmas tradition. Yeah. And you had the same people coming back year after year after year. I get messages on our Facebook account for that farm, saying, "Hey, are you open for Christmas trees this year?" And I'm like, "No, it'll be next year probably." But it's people, they have a specific spot they want to go, and they bring the family, and sometimes they bring the dogs, sometimes they bring a flask.
That's my kind of tradition. I like that.
That was there was one family in particular who would bring they'd bring a bottle of wine and drink that while they were walking around, and then they'd have a flask too that they were drinking out of. And then when they got back and tied the Christmas tree on the truck, they would do a shot right before they drove home.
Wow!
And actually, they'd go to the winery across the street. They might have had a problem.
I'm thinking
they've let us have the shot.
It
with
might
them
not be a bad idea. Like once you
Yeah.
find the Christmas tree that speaks to you, to do a toast to the Christmas tree
Yeah.
as a sacrifice for coming into your house. Maybe that's not a bad
but
idea.
you think about what we were talking about earlier with the carbon offsets. This is something that's physically offsetting carbon. It's in the ground for 5 to 10 years, sometimes even more, depending on how fast they sell. So it's doing that purpose, and then a lot of times you can even repurpose them once they're out of your house. They'll use them in dune restorations. I know American Little Society does a call for trees every year.
They'll take your Christmas trees.
And they'll use them for different things. You can use them, put them in the water for like reef stabilization type stuff or fish habitat. I definitely lean real for sure.
Would you put a 10-gallon Eastern Red Cedar in your?
And
probably
decorate? Not put an Eastern Red Cedar, but I was thinking,
but
like,
that's something native to here that you could
you
could
could
turn
do
around
that.
and plant.
I would love to try it just for the weirdness of it, but like a pitch pine or a Virginia pine, even though they don't look like Christmas trees.
But I will
People
say
use
this,
white pines.
the pitch pine out at your farm could be Christmas trees. They don't harvest well, but if you're growing them in a pot, they don't tend to like being grown in a pot. But if you could get a nice, it'd probably have to be like a 15-gallon tree to get, but to turn around and plant that or donate it to someone that could plant it.
And then you go to the West Coast and you have Douglas fir and even some of the like Canaan firs. There's a lot of plants that are native to the U.S. that are used as Christmas trees.
Scotch pine I've seen used, like that kind of
So,
stuff.
but they're not the ones that everyone well, it depends on where you are. Like if you're in North Carolina and you want a Fraser fir, well, you can.
Yeah,
there
you
is
can
a
have
native
that.
plant there.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's just not quite native here. So it's
So, you taking it or leaving it?
I'm taking it. I
Yeah,
definitely
okay.
take real Christmas tree.
All right.
Native Christmas tree. It depends on where you are. I think.
Okay. All right. I think it depends too. Our options are limited.
I definitely lean real. There's like all agriculture. There's some issues that happen there too. That you're keeping stuff alive that's not supposed to be grown that way in a lot of cases.
Like, would you do a hemlock in your house? I know it's not really native here, but would you do a hemlock?
I've never seen a hemlock as a Christmas
Either
tree.
have I. That's why I don't know how feasible it is.
Huh. That's an interesting
Maybe
one.
it doesn't like to be a cut tree, but maybe in a container it would
I
work.
could use this for my secret. What did I write down for my secret?
Well,
today?
save it for your secret because I'm looking at the time and we gotta. We should
we
probably
gotta
wrap
wrap
it up
this up.
because you have an appointment.
Yeah. What did I put for my secret, Fran?
It's down.
Oh,
there.
yeah. No, this is a better one for
All
my
right,
secret
all
than
right.
what I have.
Awesome.
So,
All right, let's wrap it up then.
all right. So that is. Did we have anything else? No, that's it.
No, that's it.
So that's going to wrap us up for today. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet, presented by Magic Mind and Pinelands Nursery.
Speaking of thank yous, thank you, RJ Comer, for our Buzz theme music, which is called Nightly Suicide. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music wherever you consume your music, or definitely go over to Pandora and check out his Americana playlist. You'll be happy that you did. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Native Plants _Healthy Planet, and also YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Don't forget about the question and comment line. You can call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. Ask a question or leave a comment. We're going to play it on a future episode of The Buzz and answer it to the best of our ability. And thank you to all the wonderful participants of the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. I love popping in and seeing all the wonderful conversations going on over there.
So you can buy Native Plants Healthy Planet merch at our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com.
I've bought 4 long sleeve shirts.
Have you really?
Yeah.
I need to get mine for the trade show. I keep forgetting about it.
I got one, and I will say this, on the long sleeve shirts and the ones where the writing are on the back,
Yeah.
those shirts do tend to shrink a little bit. So I would go maybe a little large. If you're in between, go a little large. Like I actually went larger and threw them in the dryer for a little bit to get a little bit of shrinkage.
Yeah. It's with the shirts, some of them, there's 2 different, there's like the classic t-shirt and then there's the premium t-shirt. Yeah. This is on our end that you're deciding from. And the classic t-shirt is the one that shrinks.
Yeah.
It's a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
The premium t-shirt is one where the prices, we had to raise the prices on those a little bit so we could still
That's a
have
nicer
money
shirt.
to give away.
That's a
but it is
nicer
a lot
shirt.
nicer shirt
Yeah.
at the same time. So
I will say this, now that I'm a proud owner of a Blackstone grill, I might be getting the apron.
Oh, yeah,
I think
that's
I'm
a good
getting
one.
the apron
Yeah.
because I don't want to splatter my clothing.
Yeah.
So I think that may be a fantastic purchase
That's
for
a
me.
good idea. I'll have to raise the price on that for you before you buy it.
Now, Agatha did offer to let me wear her aprons, Besides the fact that she's like a foot shorter than me.
Yeah.
They're a little girly.
They got like frills and whatnot.
Yeah. Need something a little more my.
But so you can, and we had all those new designs. We talked about them a
Yes.
bunch. There's a lot of cool stuff up there. You can also listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com, but you're probably going to listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, really wherever you consume your podcasts. When you're there, if at all possible, leave a 5-star review. It goes a long, long way to promoting the native plant message and having other people hear about us. And if you do a little write-up with that 5-star review, I'm going to give you a shout-out on our next Buzz episode. So,
Awesome. All right. You got a secret.
Yeah.
What is it?
So I originally was going to talk, this is a really dumb secret in my mind, but my son built his first gingerbread house, and I've been slowly picking away at the candy on there. But when we're talking about Christmas trees,
slowly going down in resale value.
yeah. When we're talking about Christmas trees, I remembered when I was in college. Did I use this last year?
I don't think so.
When I was in college, I think it was my senior year. We were living in this rundown house that was built in 1820. It was a duplex, and it was not good, nice at all. And we had we wanted to get a Christmas tree, and I had friends of mine that I wouldn't say they were that close of friends. They were just people I hung out with years before. They'd cut one down from the bank across the street from their house. We weren't going to do that, so we went up to our property a little further north than there, and found one like in the woods, and it was perfect. Cut it down, brought it back, put it in the tree stand, and then we decorated it with beer cans, shotgun shells, and I think is there on the Miller High Life box, is there like a picture of like a girl sitting on a moon or something like that? Whatever it was. It was some beer box that had like a picture of a girl, like an old timey girl. So we cut that out, and that was the angel on top of the tree.
It wasn't a St. Pauli girl?
No. I don't remember exactly what it was. I have a picture of it somewhere on my phone or on my Facebook from years and years ago. But that was our ingenuity that we came up with. Speaking
of college, it's not a secret of mine, but it's actually a story that Saul told me when he was in college. It was he had an apartment, I think, for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And his sophomore year, the house across the street put out a sofa for trash at the end of the day, or at trash day. Well, in the middle of the night, they went and got that sofa because they're like, oh, this is better than anything we have in our apartment.
Yeah.
Well, when they moved out in their senior year, in the middle of the night, they put the sofa back on the person's lawn in the middle of the night. So they woke up the next day and go, what? I threw this out 3 years ago. Yeah. Like, how did this come back? So I just thought that was pretty funny. So that's a great secret.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. Coming up, we have a guest next week, so make sure you tune in to see who it is. And until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.